Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate the poster for the American in Photoshop. If you'd like to follow along, go ahead and look at the description of this video. I have included links to the assets that you will need. Alright, once you've done that, let's get started. Alright, the first thing I want to do is take a look at the original poster. I got this off impawards.com. I will include a link to it in the description of this video. So what we have here is we've got a paper texture. On top of that, we have an orange square image of a woman in halftone, pretty overexposed. Then we've got our main character. He's been cut out, given a sepia color treatment and kind of a noise pattern on top of him. And then we have our lettering. We've got black, and then we've got the American that's kind of cut out of the orange block and also has this character cut out. We've got our credits and then our release date. So this is essentially what we're going to recreate in Photoshop. Obviously, I don't have access to the original photos, so we're going to be using images from Unsplash, which again, you can find in the description of this video. All right, let's go to New. We're going to create a new document that's 2000 pixel wide, 3000 pixels high. We want the resolution to be 72 and a white background. So let's hit create. Next, I want to set up the guides, which are going to show us where the orange box is and kind of help guide placing things. So let's go to View, New Guide Layout. And when you open it, you'll probably see this. So I want 4 columns, no gutter. I want 5 rows, no gutter. And then for the margins, I want 110 pixels for the top, left, and right. And then for the bottom, I want 100 pixels. Let's hit OK. All right, next I want a paper color. So I'm just going to add a solid color layer here. And I'm going to add this color here, E9E6D3. Let's hit OK. Next, I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to grab from Texture Labs. I've got a Texture Labs Paper 159. I got this off of texturelabs.org, a great resource for textures to use in your designs. I also highly recommend Texture Labs' YouTube channel, where he has some amazing tutorials on Photoshop and using textures in Photoshop. All right, so once I've placed it, what I want to do is I want to match it closer to my paper color. So to do that, I'm just going to add a mask so that I can see my paper color. And then with my background selected, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Curves, and just adjust this curve to better match my paper color. So I need to make it brighter. It's too saturated, so I can take down my reds. Maybe just take it down from the top, something like this. And it's too yellow, so we'll just pull out some yellow. Something like that is really close in terms of the color. Now I can delete this layer mask, and I'm just going to take this layer and set the opacity to about 50%. So there you go, that's just adding some texture on top. Next, we're going to build out the frame here for where we want our orange box to appear. So I'm going to make a box. You can see our guides are determining where that box is going to be. Add a new layer. I'm going to call this orange box. And I'm going to fill this with white. So I want to default my colors. I'm going to hit D on the keyboard. That defaults to black and white. And then X on your keyboard switches these two colors so that white is my foreground color. And then I can do Option Delete or Alt Backspace to fill with that color. And I do Command D to deselect. All right, so now I have my orange box. Now we're going to go to File, Open, and we're going to open the image of the woman's face. And I'm just going to use my marquee to select that, her face. I'm going to do Command C, close this document, and do Command V. Now I want to clip this to my orange box. So to do that, I'm going to hold down Option and just click between the two layers there. Now we can drag her around and she'll always stay inside this frame. So I want this eye to kind of line up there, and then I'm going to do Command T for transform, take my anchor point here, which if you don't see it, you can turn it on here, and just drag the anchor point to there. All right, then I'm going to hold down Option and just make this bigger so her teeth go to where this guide is here, and then I'm going to rotate it a bit so that the dimple of her smile is on the right side of this guide. Something like that. That's pretty much where I want her face. Now the next two steps is going to work in conjunction with each other, and that's a curves and then doing a halftone pattern. So let's add the curve first. Now before I start adding any filters to this, what I want to do is convert this to a smart object. So let's convert it to a smart object first, and then we're going to add our curves. And the reason for this is with a smart object, when I add a curve or other filter, it's going to add it as a smart filter, and I can then go back and adjust it. So here I just want to bring my white point up and then bring up my white so that pretty much everything just kind of falls off to white except for her eye, her nostril, and her mouth. And I do want this part of her eye to be black, so I'm going to pull in the bottom just a little bit too, something like this. Let's hit OK. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone, and in here I want the max radius to be 8 pixels, and I want every channel to be on 90 degrees. And I hit OK. There you can see it's now nicely made our dot pattern. Now there's a few things I want to adjust. For one, I don't want all this darkness on the right side because that's where our character is going to go, and we kind of want it just orange behind him. So the way to fix that is to double click in here and basically just add a light colored gradient across this side of her face like this. Now the curve is going to take this lighter color and kind of bring it to white. So it doesn't have to be super accurate. You see, all it's doing is kind of whiting this out where our character is going to go. All right, next we're going to make this the orange color, and for that I'm going to use a gradient map. So let's go gradient map. I want to clip it to the layer below, which I can do with this icon right down here, or by holding Option and click in between. So there you go. All right, and what a gradient map does is it applies the left side of your gradient to your darks and the right side of your gradient to your lights. Now, if you have trouble remembering that, just look at your histogram. This is the left side is always your darks, the right side is always your lights. All right, so we're going to click on this to change our gradient. And I want my black color, which is going to be this left color, to be kind of a dark reddish black. And then the right side here is going to be our orange color. So let's just pick an orange color, probably something around there. And already you can see we're getting the effect that we want. Now, these dots here, I don't want to be black. I actually want them to be kind of a dark orange color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and start adjusting the position of the right here until I see all those dots disappear. So let's keep moving this to the right. And that's about the dots that I want to be black. And the rest I all want to be kind of a dark orange color. So what I'm going to do here is add another guide after this point, and then take this point and make it slightly more orange, slightly darker, so like this. And then if I drag this point to the right, you can see that those patterns starting to show up there, and I can make them a little stronger too by just dragging this to the right. You're going to see a little more of those few dots. So I think I can actually drag this all the way to the right so we have those little dots across the image. Let's hit OK. We'll do Command 0 to fit. And I do want her mouth to have a little more darkness. So what I'm going to do is just double click on this curve and just kind of make this a little bit darker. So I'm seeing a little bit more of her mouth and her nostril there. So something like there. Let's hit OK. and it's going to adjust accordingly and reapply those effects. So for the time being, I think this is fine. Obviously, you can adjust that as much as you want. Now, the other benefit of having this layer here is despite all these layers on top, this still controls the blending mode of all of them. So I can go here, put this on multiply, and now I'm seeing my paper texture through there and getting some nice texture in this image without having to change the blending modes of either of these two. Okay, I don't like this darkness down here, so again, I'm going to go in here and just add a little light gradient toward the bottom here, like this. That should get rid of it. Let's save that. There you go, it got rid of it. Okay, good. So now I've got my eye element in there. The next thing we're going to do is bring in our main character. So let's go to the top of the layer stack, or we can even deselect all the layers, and then go File, Open, and we're going to open this next image from Unsplash. And I'm going to go to the quick selection tool. That's going to give me the select subject. I'm going to click on that and then go to select and mask. Let's zoom in here. You can see it's done a pretty good job all around except for where the glasses are, which is kind of expected. So we'll clean that up afterwards. In here, all I want to do is take my edge refine brush, just kind of go around the edge of his hair here. Just kind of go around, make sure nothing else is too bad on the selection. It actually looks really good. Add a little bit of smart radius, maybe 2 pixels, hit OK, and then I'm going to add a mask. Okay, so now I want to clean up the glasses area. First thing I'm going to do is just turn off the mask. So to do that, I'm going to hold Shift and click on the mask icon. That turns it on and off. It doesn't get rid of the mask, all it does is turn it off. All right, now I'm going to go on to my pen tool. And for any selection that includes curves, I generally use the pen tool because you have a lot more control than the lasso tool. And after we've made our path here, which is just clicking, dragging, and controlling these dots, what we're going to do is turn this into a selection. So let's go ahead, make the selection where we want it. And then I can right mouse click, make selection, 0.1 radius is fine. And then if I option click on the mask, it'll show me the mask. And I'm going to fill this with white, so X to make white my foreground color, and then option delete. And then I'm going to invert my selection, and outside of the selection, I'm going to paint with black. So just black brush, just paint that area out like that. All right. Now we can deselect, hold Option, click on the mask again, and I'm going to convert this to a smart object and then drag it into our primary composite here. And we can call this main character, and we're going to move him. I'm going to do transform here and just make him smaller so he fits in here. I kind of want him peeking past the frame on both the top and the bottom, but just by a little bit like this. And then on the right side here, I kind of want his pant leg to line up with this edge margin guide, so something like this. Okay, now we need to give him his kind of image treatment. To do that, I'm going to first turn him to black and white with a black and white filter. And the nice thing about the black and white filter is I can control the luminosity of various colors. In this case, I want his skin to be lighter, so I'm just going to take the red and the yellow and push those up a little bit. Hit OK. All right, next thing we're going to do is a curve to give him his sepia tone kind of a look. I'm going to use an adjustment layer for that. I'm going to clip the adjustment layer. And here we are going to push the black toward where the black really starts in the histogram there. And then I'm going to bring up the red a bit so we get this red in there. And then bring up the highlight there to kind of match where that histogram starts. I'm going to do the same with the green on where the green starts there, like that. And For the yellow, I want to bring some yellow into him to match the background paper. So I'm just going to bring the yellow point down here to about there. So that's giving him that sepia toned color that I want. And the next thing I want to do is give him that texture. So to do that, I'm going to go to Layer, New Layer. We're going to put this on Overlay, and we're going to call this Noise Texture. And we want to make sure this box is clicked. Fill with Overlay Neutral Color. And with Overlay, 50% gray, which is what this layer is, does nothing. So that's important to know. All right, so now we're going to clip this like that, and then we're going to, I'm going to put this back on normal for now and go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And we're going to make this 100%. You can see it's just creating this crazy noise pattern. And if we zoom in real close, we really don't have many grays. We have black, white, and a few tiny bits of grays. In order to mix properly the layer below, we need a little bit more grays. So I'm going to do that by going Filter, Blur, and just do a single blur. Now you can see we have a lot more grays. I'm going to take this and put it on Hard Mix. You can see it's doing what we want, but it's doing it way too strong. So rather than taking down the opacity, I'm actually going to take the fill down to 40%. And there you go. It's now giving us that beautiful pattern we want. It's all looking pretty darn good. All right. The next thing we're going to do is add some textures on top of the whole thing. I'm going to go File, Place Embedded. We've got a few other textures from Texture Lab. Again, can't recommend him enough. Great Photoshopper, and he's offering a lot of great assets for free. Check it out, texturelabs.org. All right, so here's our texture. If we look here, you can see that our histogram is not centered. So if you can imagine this being our histogram, this gray here is further toward our light side, so it isn't 50% gray. If I put this on Overlay, turn it on and off, you can see it's brightening up our whole image. I don't want to do that. I really just want it to get the texture. So I could adjust this with a curve, but I'm going to show you another trick, and that's just going to here, High Pass, set this to something really high, like 100, hit OK. Now you can see it's moved our histogram toward the center. Now when I put this on Overlay, I get the texture, but it's not changing the brightness of my image. So cool trick when you're using textures, grunges, or anything like that, you can use that trick to get that pattern. All right, let's put this on 50%. So it's not quite as strong. And then I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and do this one here. Again, same thing. Just going to make it to size, run a high pass filter on it, and then put it on Overlay. This one is obviously much stronger. I think it's a little too strong. I don't like this line there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it bigger so that that line lines up with my guide there. Hit OK, and then put this on 50% as well. Maybe even less, maybe 25% for this one. Okay, and then the last one is a primarily black. So for this one, what we're going to do is put it on screen. And it's getting the effect I want. It's a little too strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it behind my main character. So it sits, so it's not so much on him. I'm going to put this on 40%. I'm going to put another one and actually clip it to him. And this one I'm going to make a little bit stronger because I want it more on him than the background. So this one I could probably bring up to about 75%. There you go. All right, good. So we now have our textures in place. The last thing we're going to do is add some titles. So let's put all this into a folder. That's Command G to group, and we're going to call this artwork. And then we'll add another folder called titles. And for the titles, I'm going to go on my type tool, hit D, so I get black as my color. I'm using Compacta BT Bold. If you don't have that font, I will include in the description of the video a link to a equivalent Google font that you can use. All right, so first things first, we're just gonna write George Clooney is. All right, let's zoom in here, and I want this to fall right about here, and I want the George Clooney to be kind of centered between these two guides here. And I want to make this is about half the size. So if it's 111 right now, let's make it 60. And then I also want to get it closer. So I can hold Option, and then with my left arrow key, just nudge that closer to the rest of the text. Something like that looks really good. And then we'll drag this down, holding Option to make a copy. I'm going to click on I, select this background color, go back, and then hold Option, delete to fill it. So that's just our paper color. I'm going to do a the there first. And our the is going to be, I don't know, to about the end of Clooney. And I want this lined up to the top of this guide. And then we're going to drag this down. We're going to type American. And the American we want to make bigger. I want it to be, let's say about there. And I think we can also move this up a little. I think bold might be a little bit too bold. Let's try Roman. Yeah, I think for the American, I'm going to use Roman instead of bold. That's going to allow me to make this a little bigger. Fill up that space more nicely. So like that. All right, then the next thing I want to do is kind of this cutout character out of the American there. I'm going to go to File, Open. I just found an image of a guy falling. And we're just going to use this. So let's go to our object selection. I'm going to make a box around him. One thing I've run into, and I'm going to show you a little trick here, is if you start making your box and realize here that I missed the foot, what you can do is click down on the spacebar, and then you can move your whole selection around. So that's a nice little trick. It works with all your selection tools, your marquee selection tools. After you've made a selection, the spacebar will move that selection around. All right, there you go. He's selected. Let's go to Select Subject. Whoops, Select and Mask, I mean. There's a few spots that got missed there. Let's go to our quick selection. I'm going to hold down Option so it turns it into the minus. And just paint in this area here. And let's get his fingers in there. Now this is going to be much, much smaller, so I don't care if there's a few mistakes, but for the most part, we want it to be a halfway decent selection. That'll work. Let's hit OK. And here, I'm not even going to take anything from here. I'm just going to drag the selection in here. And then we can make this right mouse click, go Transform Selection. We're just going to make this smaller, move it over here. To about right there. And then holding down Option, I'm going to click on the mask. That'll cut him out. And I think that looks pretty darn good. Okay, last thing is the credits. For that, I'm just going to use some fake lorem ipsum. So we'll just make a text box. So if you're on your text tool and you kind of click and start dragging, it's going to make a text box like this. I'm going to change the color here to kind of a dark orange brown. And then we're going to use a font called Blue Screen. And I'm just going to make this smaller. If I hold down Option and Command and use comma and period, that'll make the text bigger and smaller. If I hold down Option and use the up and down arrows, it's going to pull the line height together or spread it apart. So nice little trick there. Okay, so that's about what I want the text to look like. And now what we can just do is go type and do paste lorem ipsum. That's going to fill up the rest. And then finally, we can just take this George Clooney, hold down Option, drag it to down here. We'll type September 2021 everywhere. And we'll hold down I, or click on I, select this orange color, do Option Delete to make it that color. And then Command T to transform. I'm just going to make this quite a bit smaller. About there. And then I want it centered on this guide. So like that. I'm going to do Command semicolon to turn off my guides. One last thing is this American right now is very clean. Probably want it to have a little bit of grunge. What I can do is take it. So click on this. That's going to select it. Now I need this mask selected as well. If I just click on the mask, it's going to select the mask. So what do we do in this situation? Well, what we do is we hold down Command, Shift, and Option, and then click on the mask, and now we're going to get that cutout. Now I can turn the American, I'm going to hold down Shift and Command. I'm going to add the to my selection. I can turn that off. And then if I go down here to my orange box, hold down Option, it's going to cut it out. So now I can see the actual paper texture underneath it. I can also add just a little bit of grunge to our George by going to my blending options and in here just dragging up the bottom until we just see a little bit of breakup. Hold down Option, spread these points apart a little bit, just like that, just so that we have a little bit of texture coming through there. So there you have it. That's how you recreate the poster for the American in Photoshop. Hopefully you learned some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use in your own creative project. And if you did enjoy this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, leave a comment, share this video, turn on your notifications, do all those happy fancy things, and I'll see you next time. Here's some other videos to check out in the meantime.